The grand hall of the Zell Dominion was filled with light and sound. Thousands of alien nobles, warriors, and envoys gathered to witness a wedding that had already become a joke across the galaxy. Lyra, Princess of the Zell, stood tall in her ceremonial armor, glowing scales reflecting the bright torches. She was proud, fierce, and feared in many star systems. Yet the man standing beside her was not another Zell commander, not a prince of a rival empire, not even a warrior of name. He was a human, a man from Earth. His name was Daniel. The moment he entered the hall, whispers spread like fire. Some laughed openly. Others covered their mouths, but let their eyes shine with mockery. Humans were considered weak, fragile creatures. Their bones broke easily. Their skin tore under the lightest blade. Their planet was poor, their fleet small, their power almost nothing. The galaxy had long ago stopped considering Earth a serious player. To see one of their princesses marry such a being was scandal, comedy, and insult all at once. One noble leaned close to another and whispered, "This is not a marriage. This is a performance. She is showing pity to the weak creature." Another scoffed. "No, she is shaming herself. Imagine binding the bloodline of the Zell to something so soft." Even the musicians seemed unsure whether to play with honor or mockery. The drums rolled, but there was no pride in their beat. Daniel stood calmly at the center of the storm. He wore no armor, only simple black robes gifted to him for the occasion. He had no weapons. His shoulders were straight, his eyes steady. He did not smile. He did not speak. He only looked at the vast crowd, and his silence seemed to unnerve some. Though they could not explain why, the ceremony began. High Priest Varen raised his claws and brought forward the relic of valor, the ancient warstone of the Zell. This object was older than the Dominion itself. Legends said it had once glowed in the hands of the first conquerors, lighting the path of their fleets. Whenever touched by a true warrior, it would shine. But for centuries, it had been silent, cold, and dead. Still, it remained a symbol, and in every marriage of importance. The relic was presented to test the strength of the bond. One by one, the nobles approached it. Each warrior touched it, hoping for even a flicker. None came. The crowd accepted it with weary amusement. The relic was long dead after all. Then the priest, smiling cruelly, turned to Daniel. "Let the human touch it. Perhaps the stone will at least pity him." The hall erupted with laughter. Lyra did not laugh, but her eyes narrowed. She had never wanted this man. The marriage had been forced by political pressure and strange whispers in the council. She believed it was all a trick to weaken her. Daniel stepped forward. He placed his palm on the relic. Nothing happened. The stone remained dark, cold, and heavy. The laughter grew louder, crueler, "See?" shouted one noble. "Even the relic rejects him. Even the gods know he is nothing. Look at his hand." Another jeered. "It shakes, already. He cannot even bear the weight." But Daniel's hand did not shake. He kept it there for a long moment, eyes unreadable, before withdrawing slowly. He did not defend himself. He did not argue. He simply stepped back and let the laughter continue. The priest sneered and raised his claws again. "The ceremony is complete. The princess has taken her husband. May their bond serve the Dominion, though I fear it will serve us only with laughter." The crowd roared. Glasses of shining nectar were raised. Toasts were shouted, some mocking, some cruel, few sincere. Lyra forced herself through the ritual vows, her face hard. She felt shame burning in her chest, though she would never admit it aloud. She had wanted a warrior beside her, a commander who could lead fleets and silence her rivals. Instead, she stood beside a man the galaxy already called weak. Yet as the feast began and the music rose, she noticed something strange. Daniel did not drink, though many cups were offered to him. He did not stumble or lose patience, though insults rained down upon him. Instead, he listened, always listening. His eyes moved across the hall, watching each noble, each guard, each servant. He seemed to be memorizing every gesture, every pattern, every word at one point. A young warrior of the Zell slammed a goblet down in front of him. "Tell me, human, do you bleed easy? Will you cry if I strike you here, in front of your wife?" The warrior raised his hand as if to test the claim. The hall fell silent, eager to see the human humiliated further. But Daniel only looked up, calm as ever. His voice was low but steady. "If you strike me, the hall will see a warrior dishonor himself by attacking an unarmed guest. Which would be more shameful, I wonder, my blood on the floor, or your name stained forever?" The warrior froze. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some laughed again, but the laughter was thinner now. Daniel had not raised his voice, not lifted his hand, and yet he had turned the insult back on his challenger. Princess Lyra's eyes flickered with surprise. She did not speak, but for the first time she studied him closely. Perhaps there was more to this human than she had thought. The night dragged on. Dancers moved across the floor, fires burned bright, and the galaxy's elite continued their mocking celebration. Yet in the shadows of the hall, something stirred. The relic, though still dark, gave a faint hum. It was so quiet, so small, that none of the aliens noticed. But Daniel, sitting alone with his calm eyes, felt it. He turned his head slightly toward the ancient stone, as if he had heard it whisper, and then, just as quickly, the hum faded. No one else noticed. The feast continued. The jokes continued. To the galaxy, the human husband was nothing more than a weak link in the great chain of power, but something had moved in the darkness. Something had stirred. Daniel sat in silence, the voices of the nobles echoing around him. He did not smile. He did not laugh. But deep within, behind those steady eyes, he carried something the galaxy had long forgotten: patience. And patience, when sharpened, could be more dangerous than any blade. The palace of the Zell Dominion was built on black stone and glowing crystals. Its towers reached high into the skies of Valor Prime, the homeworld of the proud Zell, from her balcony. Princess Lyra often looked over the shining city and the fleets rising and landing from the starport. She should have felt pride. She should have felt strength. Yet since her marriage, all she felt was bitterness. Her husband Daniel, the human, was not what she had wanted. She had been forced by politics and unseen council votes to accept him. In the eyes of the Dominion, she was bound to a weak species. Everywhere she went, whispers followed her like a shadow. The princess married a fragile one. Her house will fall with him. Daniel, however, never answered the whispers. He moved through the palace quietly, never boasting, never raising his voice. To many, that silence was proof of weakness. To Lyra, it was almost unbearable. One morning, as she entered the training grounds, she found Daniel standing alone near the weapon racks. He was examining a plasma spear, a long staff with burning edges. When he tried to lift it, the weapon wobbled in his hands. The soldiers nearby burst into laughter. "See the husband of our princess!" One soldier shouted. "He cannot even hold the spear straight." Another leaned close to Lyra and sneered. "Perhaps we should make him our mascot in battle. The enemy will die of laughter before they fight." Lyra said nothing. But inside, her anger grew. Not anger at the soldiers, anger at herself and at Daniel. She hated the shame she felt. She turned away, leaving him there among the laughter. But Daniel did not lower his eyes. He carefully set the plasma spear back and looked at the soldiers. His voice was calm. It is not always the strongest arm that wins a war. Sometimes it is the one who sees the battlefield more clearly. The soldiers laughed harder. To them, his words were nothing but excuses. But one servant girl, watching from the corner, frowned. She had seen Daniel spending nights in the library, studying old war maps and forgotten records. He was always reading, always asking questions. He seemed more like a strategist than a fighter. Later that day, during a meal in the grand dining hall, the nobles mocked him again. They spoke loudly, making sure Daniel could hear. Humans cannot breathe long in the void. Their lungs collapse. They do not heal as we do. A single cut may end them. They're a species of weakness. Why does the princess not throw him back to his pitiful earth? Daniel ate quietly, not responding. He only looked around the hall, his eyes pausing on each noble, as if memorizing their faces. His silence angered them more than words ever could. Finally, Lyra turned to him. "Do you hear what they say? Do you not care?" Daniel met her eyes. For the first time, she saw something deep in them, not fear, not shame, but something calm and unshakable. "I hear," he said softly, "but their laughter changes nothing. Time will answer them better than I could." Lyra looked away, unsettled. She had expected him to beg, or defend himself, or break under the insults. Instead, he carried himself as though none of it mattered, confused her more than she wanted to admit. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She walked the palace halls and passed by the old archives, where ancient texts were stored. She paused when she saw the lights inside. Daniel was there, alone. He had spread star maps across a long table. Old records of battles, forgotten strategies, fleets that had risen and fallen. He studied each one with quiet focus. "You waste your nights with dead words," she said from the doorway. Daniel did not look up. Dead words hide living truths. Empires fall when they ignore them. She frowned. "You are not a warrior. You will never lead fleets. What use is this to you?" At last he raised his eyes to hers. His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "A warrior swings his blade for a moment. A commander shapes the galaxy for centuries. Which would you rather have at your side?" For a moment, Lyra had no answer. She turned and left, her thoughts heavy. In the days that followed, strange rumors began spreading. Servants whispered that the humans saw patterns in the stars. He asked questions no one else asked. He noticed flaws in the palace defenses that even the generals had ignored. When he spoke, most laughed. But when one of his warnings came, Trua supply route collapsing from pirate attacks exactly where he predicted, some of the laughter grew quieter. One evening, as a storm of fire rain passed over the capital skies, Daniel stood again before the relic. No one else was there. He placed his hand gently on the ancient stone, whispering something only he could hear. The relic remained dark, yet for the briefest moment, there was that faint hum again, that almost sound that Nozel had noticed before. Daniel stepped back slowly. His expression did not change. But deep inside, he knew something was waiting. The galaxy saw only a weak husband, a man unworthy of his princess. The nobles still mocked him, the soldiers still laughed at him. The servants' whispers grew. Some began to wonder if the human silence was not weakness but patience. And patience, like a storm gathering far away, was a danger none of them were ready to face. The war drums of the Zeldaminion thundered across Valar Prime. For the first time in decades, a neighboring empire, the Core Alliance, had declared war. The Core were ruthless, insectoid creatures with massive fleets. Their ships were built for swarms, overwhelming enemies with numbers. The Dominion Council gathered in the Great War Chamber, a round hall where star maps floated in the air. Princess Lyra sat among the generals, her armor polished and her expression hard. Beside her stood Daniel, the human. His presence was almost laughable in that room filled with warriors, commanders, and battle-scarred veterans. The nobles whispered behind their claws. "Why is he here?" One sneered. "He is no warrior. Let him watch from the kitchens. The princess drags her pet everywhere." Daniel ignored the voices. He studied the glowing star map at the center of the room. It showed the borders of the Dominion, with red marks where core fleets had been sighted. The generals argued over plans, their voices loud and sharp. "We strike first," one said. "Hit them at the border before they reach our colonies." "No," another shouted. "We gather our full fleet and crush them in one decisive blow." "Fools," barked a third. "If we wait, they will cut our supply routes. We must secure the trade lanes first." The argument grew so heated that no one noticed Daniel had stepped closer to the map. Only Lyra's eyes followed him. He studied the glowing routes for a long time, silent, before finally speaking in a calm, steady voice. "You are all wrong." The chamber froze. Dozens of eyes turned toward him. A ripple of laughter spread through the nobles. "The human thinks he is a strategist," one jeered. Perhaps he read it in one of his dusty scrolls. Lyra's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She wanted to hear what he would say. Daniel pointed to a cluster of stars near the border. "The Corps will not attack directly. They will strike here at Kavaros. It is a minor colony, easy prey, and it connects to 3 supply routes. Once they take it, they will not stop. They will bleed you slowly, cut off food and weapons, and by the time you gather your great fleet, your people will already be starving." The generals erupted in protest. "Nonsense," shouted one. "They would not waste time on such a small colony. They will aim for glory, not scraps." But Daniel stood firm. "The Corps are insects. They swarm. They do not fight for glory. They fight to drain, to weaken, to devour. Kavaros is the throat of your empire. Once they hold it, they will never let go." The chamber filled with angry voices. Only Lyra watched in silence, torn between doubt and curiosity. Finally, the High Commander raised his claw. "Enough. Human has spoken. Let him be proven wrong by the tide of war. We march as planned." The council ended in chaos. Nobles left, laughing at Daniel's words. Lyra said nothing to him, but her eyes lingered as they parted. Days later, news arrived. The Corps had struck at Kavaros, exactly as Daniel had predicted. The colony's defenses collapsed in hours. Its 3 supply routes were now under enemy control. The Dominion fleet, slow to respond, was caught unprepared. Hundreds of ships were lost in a single week. The council reconvened in panic. The generals argued louder than before, desperate to cover their shame. How could this happen? They moved too quickly. No one could have predicted it. No one, except the human, a quiet voice muttered. All eyes turned to Daniel again. This time there was no laughter. The silence was heavy. Daniel did not gloat, did not raise his voice. He only spoke with the same calm tone. "You ignored the truth because it did not come from one of your own. You call me weak, but weakness is not failing to lift a spear. Weakness is failing to see what is in front of you." The chamber fell into uneasy silence. Some nobles lowered their eyes. Others clenched their fists in anger, humiliated. Princess Lyra felt a strange shiver run through her. She had wanted to dismiss him, to see him as nothing but a burden, but he had seen what none of their great commanders had. He had spoken the truth, and it had saved them from even greater disaster. Later that night, Lyra found him standing alone on the palace balcony. The burning lights of Valor Prime glowed beneath the stars. "You knew," she said softly. "How?" Daniel turned his eyes to the horizon. "I watched, I listened. Your people see only strength in the swing of a blade. But war is not only muscle. It is patience. It is knowing how an enemy thinks. The Corps were not hard to predict. You simply never tried to understand them." Lyra folded her arms. "And what are you, Daniel? Not a warrior? Not a commander? Then what?" He looked at her. And for a moment she saw something in his gaze she could not name. "I am human. That is enough." The words stayed with her long after he left the balcony. In the following weeks, the relic stirred again. It was still faint, only a whisper of energy, but this time the priests felt it. They spoke of omens, of change, of a force awakening after centuries of silence. Many dismissed it as nonsense, but the whispers spread. And always, the relic hummed when Daniel was near. The galaxy still laughed at the princess and her human husband. But now, some began to whisper in private, what if the human is not weak? What if something sleeps inside him that even the stars remember? The first test had come. And it had revealed more than anyone expected. The great council hall of the Zell Dominion was restless. The war with the Quor was growing worse each day. Supply routes burned, colonies fell silent, and the Dominion's proud fleets were shrinking faster than they could be rebuilt. The nobles argued over who was to blame. Some shouted at the generals, others pointed at the princess, and some with cruel smiles pointed at Daniel. "This is what happens when a princess marries weakness," one elder snarled. Perhaps the gods punish us for bringing a human into our bloodline," another spat. "The relic itself has rejected him. Should have been our warning." Daniel stood silently beside Lyra, as he always did. He did not flinch. He did not argue. His calm presence only seemed to enrage the council further. At last, High Priest Varen struck the floor with his staff, demanding silence. "We have called upon every fleet, every weapon, yet our enemies still bleed us. If there is any power left that the Dominion may call upon, it is only the relic of valor." The hall stirred. The relic. For centuries, it had been little more than a symbol, a dead stone that no longer chose champions. Still, its presence carried weight in every heart. If it could awaken, if it could shine again, perhaps hope would return to the Dominion. The relic was brought forward on a platform of black iron, carried by 6 priests. The great warstone was smooth and gray, its surface cracked with age. Once, legends said, it had glowed with the fire of 1,000 suns when held by the first conquerors. But for more than 300 years it had been silent. The priests placed it at the center of the hall. One by one, warriors and nobles stepped forward, pressing their claws to it, hoping for even a spark of light. None came. The stone remained cold and lifeless. Whispers spread through the chamber. "It is dead. The gods have abandoned us." Even now it gives nothing. Then, as the ritual neared its end, a mocking voice rang out. "Let the human touch it again. If the gods enjoy comedy, perhaps they will grant us laughter at least." Laughter rippled through the nobles. Daniel looked at the relic, then at the mocking faces. Slowly, he stepped forward. Princess Lyra's eyes narrowed. She had seen what happened last time. Nothing. She expected another cruel spectacle, another moment of shame. Daniel reached the relic. He placed his palm gently on its surface. At first, nothing happened. The stone was silent, heavy, dark. The laughter rose louder. "See, even the gods cannot smell strength in him. He is less than nothing. Even the relic knows." Then a sound, soft, faint, a low hum, deep and ancient, rolled through the stone. The laughter froze. Daniel's hand remained steady, his expression calm. The relic began to glow. Faint lines of light spread across its cracked surface, like veins waking from a long sleep. Gasps filled the chamber. The glow grew brighter. The stone rose slowly from its platform, floating in the air. Sparks of golden fire burned across its surface. The hum became a roar, shaking the very walls of the hall. The nobles fell silent. Some dropped to their knees in fear. The priests stumbled back, their eyes wide with awe. Princess Lyra stared in shock. She could not believe what she saw. The relic, dead for centuries, was alive in Daniel's hands. Daniel did not smile. He did not shout. He simply stood, holding the ancient power as though it had been waiting for him all along. The golden fire blazed brighter, casting his face in light. For the first time, many in that hall felt fear not of the relic, but of the man holding it. High Priest Varen fell to his knees, trembling. Impossible. It has chosen him. One noble cried out, "No, this cannot be. He is human." Another whispered, "Or perhaps that is why it awoke. Perhaps it waited for something beyond us." The chamber was filled with voices, fear, denial, awe, but Daniel said nothing. He lowered his hand slowly. The relic floated back to its platform, still glowing faintly, as though unwilling to fall fully silent again. Lyra finally found her voice. She stepped forward, her words sharp. "Why you? Why now?" Daniel looked at her, calm as ever. "Because strength is not what you think it is. You have measured it in claws and blades, but the relic remembers something older, something deeper. The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. No one dared speak against him now. The relic itself had answered in his favor. That night, the whole Dominion buzzed with whispers. Servants spread the story like fire. The human husband had awakened the relic. The dead stone had chosen him. Some laughed in disbelief. Others shivered with dread. In the shadows of the temple, priests argued in secret. If the relic has chosen him, then the prophecy is true. Then our empire will change forever, or fall if he is not controlled. But Daniel was beyond their control. He walked the palace halls with the same calm steps, though now every eye followed him. Guards saluted him without meaning to. Nobles lowered their gaze when he passed. Even those who hated him could not deny what they had seen. Lyra watched him more closely than ever. She had married him with shame, thinking him weak. Now she felt something she did not expect: unease. He frightened her, not because of violence, but because of the silence in his strength. He had never demanded power, yet power was coming to him. On the balcony that night, the relic's faint golden glow reflected in the skies above. Daniel stood alone, hands resting on the railing, watching the stars. His voice was low, almost a whisper. They think this relic gives me strength. They are wrong. The strength was always mine. The relic only remembers it. No one else heard him. But across the galaxy, in dark war chambers and rival courts, word spread. The relic had awakened in the hands of a human. And with that whisper, the galaxy began to tremble. The Dominion had changed. Ever since the relic awakened in Daniel's hands, the palace no longer laughed at him. The nobles who once mocked him now lowered their voices when he entered a room. The soldiers who had jeered at his weakness now watched him with wary respect. Even the priests, who claimed to hear the will of the gods, spoke carefully in his presence. But Daniel himself remained the same. He did not wear the relic as a crown. He did not boast or demand titles. He simply continued to walk quietly through the palace halls, observing, learning. That silence made him more dangerous than 100 roaring generals. Princess Lyra could not understand him. She had expected him to seize power after the relic chose him, but he did not. He spent hours in the war archives, studying ancient battles. He spoke with engineers, asking about ship designs forgotten for centuries. He walked through the barracks, watching soldiers train. Always calm, always listening. One evening, during a tense war council, the Dominion's generals once again shouted at each other. Their fleets had suffered another defeat against the core. Supplies were running low. The Empire's borders were shrinking. They outnumber us 10-1. One general cried, "Our ships are faster, but their swarms never stop." Another argued, "We must fall back, regroup. No, to retreat is shame." Their voices filled the chamber until Daniel rose slowly from his seat. The room quieted without anyone telling it to. All eyes turned to the human. "You have forgotten what war is," Daniel said softly. His words cut through the noise like a blade. "You fight battles. The core fight the war. You try to meet them with equal force, but they do not care for glory. They consume. To defeat them, you must stop fighting like Zell." The generals bristled. "And fight like what, human?" One sneered. Daniel's eyes glowed faintly in the light of the relic that hovered nearby. "Fight like human." The room erupted in confusion. Some laughed, others scowled. But Daniel ignored them. He touched the relic, and the star map at the center of the chamber shifted. With his hand, he rearranged the glowing lines of supply routes and fleet paths. "You chase the core where they are strong," he explained. "You send ships into their swarms and lose them. Stop feeding their strength. Instead, strike where they are blind. Cut off their breeding worlds. Burn their fuel lines. Do not attack their armies, starve them. Strangle them. Make them run to you desperate and then crush them on ground of your choosing." The hall was silent. Not because his plan was simple, but because it was terrifying. The Zell had always fought directly, with honor and strength. Daniel's strategy was cold, merciless, and clever. Lyra studied him closely. There was no hesitation in his voice, no doubt in his eyes. He spoke not like a scholar, but like a man who had seen wars in his mind 1,000 times. At last, the High Commander bowed his head. "Then you will lead the fleets." A ripple of shock spread across the chamber. A human, commanding Zell warships. It was unthinkable, but none dared protest. Not after the relic had chosen him, and so it began. Daniel took command. At first, the admirals obeyed reluctantly, expecting him to fail. But one by one, his predictions came true. His fleets vanished into shadow, striking where no one expected. Core breeding nests burned. Supply convoys vanished without a trace. Massive swarms found themselves starved of fuel and cornered in empty systems. Each victory spread his legend further. Zell soldiers began whispering his name with awe. The human commander. The relic bearer. The silent blade. Lyra watched it all unfold. She saw him standing on the command deck of a warship, calm as ever as battles raged outside. He gave no grand speeches, no shouts of fury. He spoke only in quiet commands, and every order reshaped the battlefield. One officer, trembling after a battle won against impossible odds, asked him, "How do you see it so clearly, Commander?" Daniel's answer was simple. "Because I am human. We survived a world that tried to kill us every day. War is only another storm. You just have to know where to stand when it breaks." The words spread through the fleet like fire. Soldiers began repeating them in the barracks, in the hangars, in the quiet moments before battle. His calm became their strength. But with every victory, fear also spread. Across the galaxy, rival empires watched with unease. A human, once mocked as weak, was now turning the tide of war with the Zell Dominion. The Core, enraged by their losses, gathered their largest armada yet. Other empires whispered in secret, "If one human can do this, what happens if all of Earth rises?" Back on Valor Prime, the relic pulsed with growing light whenever Daniel touched it. Priests whispered of prophecies long forgotten. They said the relic had waited for one who did not seek glory, one who carried patience like a blade. Lyra could no longer deny the truth. She had married him in shame, believing him weak. Now she watched him move fleets like pieces on a board, watched alien commanders bow their heads before his quiet orders. And for the first time she felt not shame but something close to fear. One night, after a great victory, she confronted him in their private chambers. "Why do you not claim the throne? The relic would make you emperor. The fleets would follow you." Daniel looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because power taken too soon rots. Let the galaxy believe I am only a commander. That belief is my shield." She stared at him, torn between awe and unease. He spoke like a man carrying a secret too heavy for anyone else to hold. Outside, the stars trembled with war. Inside the palace, whispers spread faster than fire. A human now commanded fleets greater than most empires had ever dreamed. And though Daniel never called himself king, the galaxy had already begun to crown him in fear. The galaxy had begun to whisper the name of Daniel. What started as laughter in palace halls had become something else. Fear carried on every starship, every trade route, every shadowed council chamber. The Core Alliance, once confident in their swarms, now trembled at the sound of his strategies. Colony after colony was cut off. Entire nests starved before they could send their fleets. For the first time in living memory, the Core were retreating. Their endless advance had slowed then broken. But victory did not bring peace. Instead, it brought new enemies. Rival empires across the stars watched with unease. A human, a species, once mocked as weak and irrelevant, was reshaping the map of power. If one human could command fleets like this, what would happen if Earth itself rose in strength? In secret chambers, alien rulers gathered. "He must be stopped," one hissed. "He carries the relic," another warned. "Even gods bend to him. Then we will not fight him alone. We will unite. Better to destroy the Zell and their human commander now than wait for him to rise higher." And so it happened. Where once the galaxy had been divided, Now old enemies joined hands in fear. The Drax Confederacy, the Turl hierarchy. Even the scattered fleets of the Cathal came together with the broken remains of the core to form one purpose: the destruction of the man. The galaxy had begun to call the human commander. On Valor Prime, the news reached the council. The faces of the nobles turned pale when they saw the reports. The Allied fleets gathering at the edge of Dominion space were larger than anything recorded in the last 1,000 years. It cannot be real, one noble whispered. No empire has ever stood against so many at once. It cannot win. We should surrender before our worlds burn. But Daniel stood silent, studying the star map. His hand hovered over the glowing systems as though arranging pieces of a puzzle only he could see. At last he spoke. They will come together, but they will not stay together. Their fear unites them, but their pride will break them. All I must do is place the right stone in the right place, and their whole tower will fall. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. His calm terrified them more than the enemy fleet. Lyra, however, felt a strange pull in her chest. She remembered when she had looked at him with shame. Now, she looked at him and felt something else entirely dread. Yes, but also ow. He carried himself not as a desperate man, but as one who already knew the end of the war. When the Allied fleets finally advanced, their size was beyond comprehension. Thousands of ships darkened the stars, their weapons glowing like suns. Across the Dominion, fear spread. Citizens whispered prayers. Soldiers sharpened their blades with trembling hands. For the first time, even the proud Zell wondered if this was the end. But Daniel did not tremble. He gathered the Dominion's fleets far smaller and divided them into hidden wings. He used asteroid fields as traps, nebulae as shields, abandoned outposts as lures. His fleets moved like shadows, always vanishing before the enemy could strike, always appearing where they were least expected. One by one, he set his traps. Rival fleets turned against each other when they stumbled into false signals and false reports. The Caith destroyed Drax ships in confusion. The Turl lost half their armada chasing phantoms into a dead system. The core swarms starved again, cut off from their breeding worlds. The galaxy's greatest alliance began to crack. Suspicion grew between them. Pride returned. They no longer fought as one. And Daniel, patient as always, was waiting. The final trap was set at the Star of Valor itself. Daniel allowed a path into the heart of Dominion space, leaving it seemingly unguarded. The Allied fleets rushed in, eager for victory. But hidden within the solar storms, the Dominion's ships emerged, striking at the perfect moment. The relic pulsed on Daniel's command deck, its golden light spreading through the fleets like fire. The battle shook the skies. Worlds trembled as fleets burned. For hours, the galaxy's greatest powers fought against a commander they still could not understand. And when the smoke cleared, it was not the Allied fleets that stood victorious. It was Daniel. Reports spread faster than light. Entire empires fell silent at the news. The galaxy had united to kill a human and failed. Their fleets lay in ruins. Their rulers whispered of omens and curses. Some spoke of surrender before a word had even been sent. On Valor Prime, the people shouted Daniel's name. Soldiers raised their weapons in salute. Nobles, once mocking, now bent their knees. The relic shone brighter than ever, as if the stars themselves had chosen him. Yet Daniel himself did not celebrate. He stood quietly on the balcony of the palace, looking out at the stars. Lyra joined him there, her eyes still sharp but softer than before. "You have made the galaxy tremble," she said. "Even their greatest fleets could not stop you. They call you savior now. They call you king." Daniel's face remained calm. "They call me many things, but names do not matter. What matters is what comes next." Lyra frowned. "What comes next?" He turned his gaze upward, toward the endless night. "The galaxy feared me united, but fear is only the beginning. When they truly understand what humanity is, it will not be fear that guides them. It will be regret." The words hung heavy in the air. Lyra felt a chill despite the warmth of the relic's glow. The galaxy had trembled. Armadas had burned. Empires had fallen silent. And yet, standing beside him, she knew this was not the end. It was only the storm before something far greater. The war was over. But the galaxy was not at peace. The allied armadas lay broken, scattered across the stars like ashes. The core swarms had collapsed into chaos, their nests burned, their fleets starving. The Drax, the Turl, the Cathaish limped back to their shattered homeworlds, whispering curses and regrets. The once proud rulers who had mocked humanity now sent secret envoys, begging for mercy. On Valor Prime, the relic glowed brighter than ever, a golden sun at the heart of the Dominion. Priests called it a miracle. Soldiers called it destiny. The people called it salvation. And all of them named Daniel, the human once mocked, as weak their savior. But Daniel did not sit on a throne. He did not crown himself emperor. He remained as he always had, been calm, quiet, unshaken. That silence, once mocked, had now become the most terrifying thing in the galaxy. Princess Lyra stood beside him often, no longer ashamed, but still uneasy. She had married him thinking he was a burden. Now she looked at him and saw a man who had remade the galaxy with patience and strategy. She feared him, but she also could not look away. One evening, as the council gathered to celebrate the final victory, Daniel entered the chamber. The nobles who once jeered now bowed deeply. The generals who once laughed now saluted in silence. Even the high priest bent low, trembling at his approach. They expected him to give a speech of triumph, to claim the throne, to declare himself ruler of all. Instead, Daniel spoke only a few words. "You thought humans were weak? You were wrong." The silence that followed was heavier than any applause. His voice was not loud, but it carried across the chamber like thunder. The nobles lowered their eyes, unable to meet his gaze. Lyra felt her chest tighten. In those words was not just pride, but judgment. Across the galaxy, his message spread. Broadcasts carried it to worlds that had once laughed at the name of Earth. Now those same worlds trembled. Empires sent envoys to Valor, not with threats, but with apologies. They offered treaties, trade, even tribute. The galaxy had finally learned what it meant to underestimate a human. But Daniel was not satisfied with treaties. He used his victories to reshape the map of power. Borders that had once cut through weak colonies were erased. Worlds that had been enslaved by larger empires were freed under his command. Slowly, quietly, he built not just a dominion, but something greater. Children in distant colonies began to learn new songs. Songs not of Zell conquerors or core swarms, but of a human commander who turned the galaxy upside down. His legend spread faster than war had ever moved. Yet even as his fame grew, Daniel remained the same. He did not speak much. He did not boast. He carried the relic not as a crown, but as a reminder. When Lyra asked him why he never claimed full power, he answered simply, "Because true strength is not shown in taking. It is shown in waiting." And he waited years later. Alien historians would write that the galaxy's greatest mistake was not underestimating humanity's strength, it was underestimating humanity's patience. They had laughed at one man. That laugh had cost them fleets, empires, and pride. Now, when rulers gathered in their courts, they did not mock Earth. They spoke its name with care, with fear, with respect, and in quiet moments. When they looked to the stars, they whispered the same thought: we should never have mocked him. We should never have mocked his people. The regret was carved into every ruined ship, every burned colony, every silence that followed in the wake of his fleets. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. On the highest balcony of the Dominion Palace, Daniel stood once more, looking out over the endless night sky. The relic glowed faintly in his hand, not roaring now, but humming softly, as if satisfied. Lyra joined him there, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "You changed them all," she said quietly. "The nobles, the soldiers, the rulers, even me. They will never see humans the same again." Daniel's face remained calm, his voice steady. "They should not have waited to respect us. But now they do, and now they regret." The stars stretched endlessly before him. Somewhere among them was Earth, the world the galaxy had forgotten. But not anymore. Not ever again. For humanity had risen from mockery to legend. And the galaxy, once laughing, now bowed its head in silence.